Back here at the AVCA Convention, the 2024 one in Louisville, alongside Oregon head coach Matt Ulmer, I'm Daniel Gillman. It is D1 Ticker powered by Coaches.wire. And well, Coach, one thing that has certainly been a hotbed of conversation here this week has circled around this revenue sharing movement through the House into the committee and the state of unknown that so many coaches are sitting through. And a lot of this is just to kind of walk through what is known from some coaches, what is the plan of attack from others. I'd like to go all the way back to the first months that you learned about NIL in the first place, and what were the movements that were made at Oregon. How did the committee get formed, the NIL collective, and walk through coaches that maybe are with schools that haven't put that together yet, and what maybe some points of action could be?
Yeah, I think Oregon was probably one of the first, to develop a collective and be really organized within that. That's Division Street. I can't really speak to other schools, but I know that's everybody's trying to follow suit there, and I think how that that support has been disseminated in different programs is kind of varies all over the place. So, but for us, we're really blessed to have a ton of support, and some people that just want to continue to push the Ducks to new levels.
And so, if you were to try to explain to a 16-year-old what this revenue sharing process is during the recruiting process, or even just someone that walks up to you on the street and says, what does this mean? What is the entire House settlement circled around? How would you go about starting that conversation?
Well, I think first thing right now is nobody knows because nothing's official. So I think anybody that's telling you, well, here's exactly what it's going to be, that's not true. So, but we're in competitive sports, and so people are going to just try to get a competitive edge however they can. We definitely err on the side of caution. But once we will have information, then I'm sure, like everything Oregon does, we'll act upon it as aggressively as we can. But I think right now it's, I think NIL has turned into something that wasn't intended, but I think everybody could have seen or predicted that it would become. And now we're getting to the point where you need to legislate. You need to be able to rein it in. I think pay for play is not something that college athletics is supposed to be about. However, I think the student athletes absolutely have a right to earn a wage on what they're doing. And so I think you're trying to get legislation to make that happen. And that revenue sharing, that's where the form is going to take. So I think patience, none of us are good at, but that's what we require right now so that we can do things appropriately. And I think we're in a time right now where some people have more patience than others, and I'm just trying to breathe as much as possible.
That's a good answer, because I do want to kind of focus on some of the positives. In your experience with NIL, what have some of the silver linings been for you? What have you seen through the athletes, and maybe some of the ways that they've either helped, family get some money here or there, or just kept them afloat?
Yeah, I think for any student athlete, it's how are you going to pay to go home? How are you going to pay to get to school? How are you going to, how are you going to pay for your meals? Or if you want to go out for a night, nothing crazy. This is just gas. Just daily life stuff. And it's very difficult when you are a student athlete to get a job, right? That's especially at our level. It's just really not reasonable, to think that that's something that they can do. So. I think this has provided so many opportunities for student athletes, especially people that don't come from means, that really do, need to be able to work a job if they weren't a student athlete or an athlete. It allows them to have some financial freedom that they have earned by their talents. So I think that's really exciting for so many of our players and so many others that they can breathe a little bit easier. Because they know where that next meal is going to come from, or how they're going to be able to transport, or just daily things that everybody, else in the world is trying to make happen for their families or for themselves. So I think that has been a huge benefit. I do feel like our student athletes have enjoyed their lives more. Speaking to the positives, I think because, they do feel more supported and they know a little more secure financially.
Well, the biggest benefit of this Coaches.wire D1 Ticker conversation is we do get to dive into the different schools, from LSU to Arizona to Wisconsin. And so just talking about Oregon, was there a conversation in the beginning to add a financial advisor or someone to advise this NIL distribution to try to avoid mistakes being made with large sums of money in a 19, 20-year-old?
Yeah, so again, I think with Division Street being formed right away, and then also getting hooked up with Open Doors right away, and from the athletic department side, there was a lot of education to our student athletes of what this is, what it looks like right now, where this could go. A lot of opportunities for them to be able to learn about how to handle this the best they can. Talk about taxes, all the things, that generally I try to talk to our student athletes about just in life before NIL, about how to balance a checkbook, things like that, like in real life. But no, I think there's been so much of that from the Oregon side. Again, I think Oregon, we have great leadership. Rob Mullins, I think, I don't know how many you would consider better than him in the business. He is definitely not going to overpromise and underdeliver. He's going to be the other way around. I think he's really smart with his words, and anything that they put into action, I think, is extremely beneficial to the staffs and to the student athletes. So I think, again, when it's time to act, they act, and they act in the best interest of the student athletes.
So revenue sharing in one hand, the other hand comes a different level of blow, which is that 18-player roster size limit. For you, is that something where you were over 18 or under 18 these last 2 years, and something you have to factor into future classes?
Yeah, I think the only one time have we been at that 18 or over number, and that was last year when you had the merging of the COVID player and the freshman coming in. So I don't think it really affects us very much, but I know there's a lot of rosters out there that are 20 plus, even up to 24, 25, and there's other sports. Beach volleyball, is a big one where you're really going to have to pare down your numbers. So, but at least specifically for Oregon volleyball, not a big change there.
And so much of it is obviously going to be hypothetical, but with that 18 comes potentially 18 scholarships as well. And so that is something that can be positive to think about, giving an opportunity for players to not have to be a walk-on. Is that something that you guys have filtered through the discussions yet to say, all right, are we going to have any walk-ons? Some players are going to have half scholarships, or is it 18 for 18? Yeah,
again, I think something that Rob does so well that can be frustrating for a coach at times is that he doesn't really deal in hypotheticals. Okay. So I'm sure he has all of these plans, and I'm sure he has a scenario A, B, C, D for whatever happens. But I think, again, I think it's smart from leadership that you don't just throw things out there. So, but from my perspective, it's business as usual. Here's what we're trying to do. And then again, I'm sure leadership is planning for all the different contingencies. But, for us, here's where we stand.
And so as we see a lot of the unknowns continuing on, one thing, and we can conjecture about it, is this potential where the junior college eligibility changes, and one judge with one football player is certainly not going to change the entire landscape yet, but it opens up the door to at least have us talk about it. If there is a world where your NJCAA eligibility does not impact your NCAA eligibility, if you want to talk about Oregon, or you just talk about from the landscape of college volleyball, do you see it being a positive for players to then go and play for a year or two and then come over to the NCAA with less stress or less rush than they would have in the past or they do now?
I think with anybody, it's each case scenario. What's best for that person, and this just gives more opportunity, again, for those student athletes, to do what's best for them in their careers. Again, most of the players that I would deal with probably aren't going to be going down that path, right? But I'm sure there's a lot of cases where that might be the best thing for those student athletes and the schools that they're going to. So, again, limiting opportunities, I think it's something that we're going away from. And again, I think it'll just be case by case on what makes the most sense.
All right, Coach. Let's change directions towards what has been this boom of women's college volleyball that we've been in, and I'm lucky to be a part of it. It kind of started.
You're doing a great job, by the way. Thanks for all your help.
0.01%, you know what I mean?
That's part of it.
It's a part of it. And covering the sport from 2021, it's seeing this exponential rise. Do you think that this rise is sustainable to continue going in the direction that it is, or do you think there's a cap? And if there is there a way to alter that and continue this rise?
Well, having been in women's volleyball my whole life, I would say that women's volleyball has been so underrepresented and unappreciated that there's a long way to go. Right? I think we're just at the tip of where this thing could be, and I think just more and more people are starting to recognize and see, and again, with some of the ads of professional leagues in the United States, just more and more visibility. Again, Olympics always, certainly helps because of how well we do there, and just creating more household names. But you're just starting to see the networks, really put women's volleyball at the front and center, and just give us an opportunity, right? Give our women and our sport the opportunity to show what we can do, and let the public decide on if they like it or not, if there's an appetite for it. And so I feel like just now in my lifetime, there is an opportunity given, and you're seeing the results, and everybody's surprised except for the people that are involved in the sport. It's like, so I think again, our sport is a really interesting one because it's one where the men aren't leading the way. And again, in a world where, men's sports is the driver, but I think that the world is starting to understand that we can give women more of an opportunity, and it's okay. It's not a threat to the men. You're starting to see that, and you're starting to see the benefits of that happening. So again, just don't hold our women back. Give them the chance, and let's see what we can do. But you're seeing that the world is appreciative of women's volleyball, and in turn can help men's volleyball and beach volleyball and all the others. We can all grow together. But just give us the chance. Give the women the chance.
It's a great point. I think ESPN executives are starting to learn that you're not going to lose college football ratings just because you're putting college volleyball on ESPN2 or NBC even on a college football day and still garner these record numbers. And so having been in this sport, the son of...
Football is secure.
You're right. And I can be a diehard college volleyball and football and basketball fan all at the same time.
You can do that all. Yeah. I'm the same way. You can do it. Yeah.
And so as we see the bracket challenge get added, that was a huge addition, something that's been pushed for years. What else do you think? And like I said, the son of a volleyball coach, so I'm sure there's been moments in your life where you're like, oh, maybe they could add this, or maybe this could be added to the sport. Is there anything else that can be added to this conversation that you feel if you had a magic wand and just boom, automatically got added to this sport to increase levels of competitiveness or a fan interest? Is there anything that's been kind of harboring in Matt Ulmer's mind?
I think for me, it's every year I'd like to see us go back to the drawing board and act like we've never done anything and just reinvent the sport. Again, if you could blank slate and you have this women's volleyball product that is a huge product, potentially even bigger, right? How would you want to present that product? So again, there's just so many norms that we've had in our sport that is so hard to break away from, even to how we do our scheduling in the season, right? I mean, if you're starting to have more and more opportunities of big TV matches, then wouldn't we want more of those? And when do we want them? Where's the window for that? Maybe it's mid-season, but that's when we're in conference. Well, maybe we get out of conference, right? Basketball's done that. Football's not always just straight conference. It's like, it's okay for us. Maybe you have your, what's the championship? Penn State, Louisville. Maybe Penn State and Louisville want to play each other in mid-October, right? Because that could be an ABC game or whatever game that is. That will just keep people in tune throughout the entire season. So I think even just going back to things like that, and again, that's a big change for us because we've always done non-conference and then we go conference. But maybe that doesn't make the most sense. So again, continually finding the right windows for us, opportunity to continue to get more eyeballs on the sport. And again, there's a lot of examples like that. But I would like for us to continue to try to get away from what we've been because it could limit us to where we're going, and I don't think anybody wants that.
It's a great point. I'm sure the next guest we're going to talk to in Coach Booth, if Creighton had beaten Purdue and Kansas in November instead of in September, August, the committee may have reconsidered the top 4 seed, for them. And so I think that's a really interesting one. When you talk about pro volleyball coming to America, is that does it change the way that recruiting is done now? Let's talk about an international recruit, someone that may be coming from another country. Does the promise, or at least just the idea that there is now a legitimate pro league in America, add to the level of interest from players from overseas?
I've coached 41 pros, and we currently have 16 that are playing now. And while they really appreciated so many of the opportunities outside of the country, I would say 90% are really excited about the opportunities in the country immediately. And what you're seeing more of is players from outside of the country are now wanting to come here to play. So, which is what we've been doing, to other countries, for forever. So, I think again, it's more opportunity, it's more exposure. I think so many of our student athletes are thrilled by the idea that they get to be home, their parents get to watch them play, the comforts, of home. that they get to have while playing professional volleyball. So again, and this is just starting with PVF and Love and Athletes Unlimited. I mean, we're just starting. And again, I'm excited to see if all these forms of volleyball and the different sexes and court or beach or whatever that is, can we all just continue to lift each other up? And again, it's, you can like football and volleyball, well, you can like beach and men and women, and also, continue to move the needle for everybody. So, I hope that's where our heads are as an organization, and as a community.
And then last thing here, with the move for Coach Karai to go from the United States women's coach to the men's coach, and just because you mentioned men there, I had talked to him over this weekend about how can the men become more viewable? How can the men's game get more eyes? Is that something that you've also had some harboring thoughts? Do you have ideas of how that game, whether it be a way to somehow decrease the service errors, but without adding the offensive input, because if you have service be easier, then it's going to be a first ball side out literally every single time. So is there a way to even that and make it so you can grab women's audience to go watch men in the spring?
I think the men's championships are going to be on ESPN for the first time, or first time in a long time, on the main platform, right? Yep. But I think the championships will be on the main channel, right? I mean, that's one. I think anybody that watches Olympics men indoor loves it, So I think the game itself is unbelievably exciting, and is a great product. I think once again, we're talking about exposure for women. It's the same thing for the men, right? And again, I still think there's much more of a grassroots effort that needs to happen within our country of adding more teams, right? And just being more at the high school level, right? I mean, there's so many states. Oregon just added high school volleyball, right? I mean, that's still very new. And the community that I've tried to reach out to grow women's volleyball, a lot of those men that are in that, maybe it's a husband or it's just a Duck fan, they don't know the sport. You have to teach them the sport because they didn't grow up playing it. So I think it's just behind where the women have grown up playing volleyball. So I think it's more fundamentally, just getting more people playing men's volleyball at a younger age. And so it's starting with, if you can put it in the high schools, then we can continue to grow it from there. But I think the sport itself is incredible. And I think anybody that watches it, service errors, but they better. And even some of their service errors that they make are pretty fun to watch, Okay, yeah. So I think the sport is great. The coaches are amazing. The athletes are there at the highest level. So I think it's just more about the exposure piece.
Maybe you add a radar like for tennis, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All those types of things. And I think on the women's side too, we need to do that, right? There's a lot of things like that. But again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that sport. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is we just need more people that are involved in it, and that's going to grow.
Coach, appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
He's Matt Ulmer with Oregon. I'm Daniel Gillman saying so long from Louisville. Once again, this is D1 Ticker powered by Coaches.wire.